So after the Springboks got themselves the narrow victory over France, they advance to the semi-finals of the Rugby World Cup, where they will be facing off against the side that they faced in the finals in 2019, the English. It's going to be an epic game, and in this video we're going to be trying our best to predict who the Springboks are going to be going with in their starting lineup and reserves for this upcoming monumental game. Now, it is myself, it is Rugbyitch, mate. You were at the stadium live watching that contest. The atmosphere would have been electric. We have to address the elephant in the room. There is an Irish flag behind you, of course. Unfortunately, knocked out in the quarterfinals, which does now mean that two of the top four sides in the world are remaining, the All Blacks and the Springboks. Do you see them meeting in the final after what you saw from the Boks in that game?
Most people would say, yeah, an All Blacks Springbok final is the more likely situation to what we could see. But at the same time, you can never underestimate the Pumas as well as the English. So I would definitely not rule them out, immediately. But yes, you can definitely say there's maybe a level above of, I guess, like the intensity and I guess like how the those two quarterfinals went compared to the quarterfinals we saw with Argentina and England. So yeah, maybe it is one-sided, but look, I'm still I'm always going to be nervous going into any game, but look, I'm hoping that my Boks can persevere and yeah, make it to that final. And hey, if it's against the All Blacks, then it's going to be one heck of a game. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Of course, we cannot underestimate the importance of a great performance here from the ABs as well as the Springboks in their quarterfinals. The English getting themselves the win over the Fijians in their Rugby World Cup quarterfinal, but we will jump straight into it. Front row for this World Cup semi-final. Who are you thinking the Springbok selectors will be going with?
Yeah, so in terms of my front row, I've got to go with the tight end trusty here with Stephen Kitsoff number 1, Bongi Mnambi number 2, and Frans Malherbe number 3. I just think them three alone really dictated the game, I'd say, in the opening half. I mean, the Boks did pretty well to win a lot of their penalties from the scrum in that opening half, and them three, they were the key players in that instance. So yeah, I got to go with them three, but would not be surprised if they went with someone like Vincent Koch maybe to switch out for Frans Malherbe. Would not be surprised at all, but that is the three that I've gone with in terms of that front row.
Alrighty, so for myself, I am identical to yourself. Stephen Kitsoff number 1, Bongi Mnambi number 2, who did receive man of the match in their last contest, yes, which we have talked about already on the podcast. We don't know how that's happened. Definitely with some of the performances from the Springbok backline. Bongi Mnambi having 2 handling errors throughout that game, missing 3 tackles along the way, but to get the man of the match, so I believe will get himself the chance in the starting lineup once more. And then Frans Malherbe at number 3. You know the Springboks were feeling their scrum when they take a mark and go for a scrum inside of their own 22. We have not seen any side do that throughout this Rugby World Cup comp, but the Springboks, tactically, it seemed like quite a genius play. It didn't quite work out the way that they wanted it to in the end because they won the penalty, but of course not finding touch with that kick. Exactly. But overall, Stephen Kitsoff, I feel like he was right on the verge of a brilliant performance. He managed to be prominently in the breakdown a majority of the time, just getting a little bit unlucky, giving away a couple penalties, but those could easily be turnovers won in the next game up against the English. But now looking through at the locking duo that we believe the Springboks will be selecting. At number 4, I have gone with Eben Etzebeth. Managed to score himself a try in that last contest up against the French. Also got yellow carded, but overall I feel Big Eben, he was absolutely going for it throughout that game. A physical player, and he will be looking to do the exact same here, and more than likely going head-to-head with Maro Itoje, who honestly in that game between England and Fiji, he was playing some very good rugby as well. So a rematch of that Rugby World Cup final for those two players should be absolutely outstanding. Number 5, I've gone with Franco Mostert. The man made 13 tackles throughout the game up against the French. He looked absolutely exhausted when he made his way off the field, but he had poured his heart and soul into that contest. So I'm putting him once again as the number 5.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more there. You got to go with them too, with Eben Etzebeth and Franco Mostert. I mean, they were outstanding throughout that game against the French. I mean, they were just, like you said, just from a defensive point of view, they were both great from a tackling sense. I guess there's a bit of fault under Eben Etzebeth for that yellow card, but still, he was brilliant. And then from an attacking sense, of course, Eben Etzebeth got the try, and Franco Mostert, I thought, did pretty good actually in terms of the build-up play, in terms of getting those tries early on in the half. So, yeah, I just think overall, you got to have those two. And the one thing which I did notice in that game, though, was the Bok lineout wasn't as impressive, I'd say. compared to previous times I've seen them live. But again, when you're facing the French, I mean, that's what they're really based off. And I think that's where the French were probably more dominant in terms of the set pieces. Like, they were definitely the better team in terms of the lineouts, but the Boks are definitely the better team in terms of the scrums. So I definitely make sure, like, just going into the England game, they need to steal more of the lineouts. That's really what I would just say as I guess, an improvement. I mean, it's a very small improvement they need to make because they're really great. But just like, if they get a few more line-out steals, then yeah, they can definitely get the edge on England on that one.
And that's normally where Franco Mostert comes into it, isn't it? Because I believe France, if I'm not wrong, the stat was about 8 out of 9 of their lineouts they did retain. Springboks getting 6 from 6, but yeah, just a couple more steals up against the English could be absolutely crucial for the Springboks here. But now we move on to the loose forward trio. Now, these are probably a few of the positions that are up for debate going into this quarterfinal fixture. Now, that is quite bold to say, seeing as we have seen some brilliant performances from these 3 individuals who played up against the French. But what have you done to that loose forward trio, and how many changes have you decided to make?
Yeah, no, you're completely right. Where this is one of the areas of the field where I think the Boks will definitely look into to make a few changes if needed. From my perspective, I think the Boks will make one change to what we saw from that quarterfinal. I think you have to go with Khaleesi to start off with number 6. I know he did come off early, I believe for Dion Fourie, if I'm not mistaken, but I just think Khaleesi just alone, he just gives you a bit of an X factor, really, in terms of that 6th position when comparing him to most of the other 6s in the world. So just think you got to have him in your squad, and particularly that starting lineup. And then, yeah, number 7, I've got my Peters at the Toit here at number 7. But then, yeah, number 8, I've decided to go with Jasper Wiese ahead of Dwayne Vermeulen, which is a big call. But I just think that Dwayne Vermeulen he didn't have a game where I thought he stood out. Like, even in my match day vlog, at the very beginning I said I thought the key battle could be between Dwayne Vermeulen and Gregory Alldritt, but it just didn't really pay out to be that, in all honesty. So I think Jasper Wiese is probably the guy they could look at in this semifinal, and I think he's been really good throughout this Rugby World Cup. So I think he's definitely a player I would have my eye on for the starting lineup, particularly in terms of that loose forward trio.
For myself, number 6, Sia Khaleesi keeps his spot as the skipper and that man in the number 6 jersey. Number 7, I have gone with Peter Steph-Toy, although for me, I honestly feel like that's probably a position that we could see a switch happening for the Springboks. The reason I say that, he made 9 tackles throughout that game up against the French, but he did actually miss 5. Now, normally the Springboks, they will have quite a few missed tackles throughout their games, as normally they do go with that 2-man tackle technique of one man getting in and the other over the ball, so that does often add up to a few extra missed tackles along the way. But yeah, for Peter Steph-Toy, I feel like he didn't quite have that performance that he would have been after, and it wouldn't actually surprise me if somehow we have a reshuffle which involves even maybe Mostert going into that number 7 jersey. I'm just thinking outside of the box. That's normally what the Boks do in these playoff games. They have a few tricks up their sleeves. Perhaps that could be one of them that they do look at, or you just go
at the 5 and then Mostert at the 7, you'd say?
Maybe his first start of the Rugby World Cup. Although saying that, the obvious option is, of course, to put Quagga Smith at number 7.
That's the player I would consider.
The impact he has had off the bench, do you want to break that from putting him into the starting lineup?
I agree.
A few big decisions to be made here for the Springboks. And then number 8, just like yourself, I have actually put Jasper Wiese into the starting lineup. Yeah. Now, it was a very hard decision because, of course, Dwayne Vermeulen has been a brilliant player throughout this Rugby World Cup. Wiese, the same, actually had the most tackles, I believe, made by a Springboks player leading into this contest. But Dwayne Vermeulen, he's had 2 80-minute performances over the last 2 games for the Springboks, so I think it's about time that they go back to Jasper Wiese. Now, that's not saying I haven't got Dwayne Vermeulen somewhere in the Springboks lineup, but for now, I think that they might give Wiese that chance at number 8. But now moving on to the 9-10 combo. In the last game, the Springboks went with that young attacking 9-10 combo, and it was paying dividends because we did see 3 early tries scored by the Springboks. 1 by Kurtley Arendse, 1 by Damien Dialendi, and 1 by Cheslin Colby. Have you stuck with those same 2? Or have you gone with those boys off the bench with a huge amount of experience under their belt, who, to be honest, also changed the game in their own right in the later stages of the quarterfinal game?
Yeah, as I said, like, either combination, I think, or mix of both, I think works out really well for the Boks here. So there's not really like a lose-lose situation. I think it's really just win-win, because I think a lot of these combinations we've seen now in terms of the 9-10 combination has worked out really worked out brilliantly, I'd say, for the Boks throughout this Rugby World Cup. But yeah, I do think looking back at that France game, I just don't think I don't think you can change that. I actually don't think you can change that. So for that reason alone, I have gone with Kobus Reinach as the number 9, and Manny Libbok as the number 10. I just think them two alone, like you said, it was attacking rugby, and that's exactly what we want to see, obviously, in the semi-final. You want to give the early pressure towards the English and make it hard for them to kind of come back. So for that alone, I'm going with them two as my 9-10 combination.
You did slightly freeze there, Tim, but we got the gist of it. So for myself, I'll be honest, this was the hardest decision to make in the lineup in terms of who to go with at 9-10. Whether or not they stick with those young attacking players. Because when you look at it and the amount of tries the Springboks were able to score early, it makes it very easy to want to go with those two. But I honestly have a feeling that we could see the Springbok coaches switch it up completely here. And that is why I have gone with Faf de Klerk as the number 9, Handré Pollard as the number 10. Okay. So I've done the double switch. I have a feeling that is something that they could look at for this contest. I think we saw some real ability from Faf de Klerk and Handré when they came off the bench, although that leaves you in a tricky spot for Manny Libbok, because I asked this question on my live stream. Would you rather have Manny Libbok taking the first kick of the game or the kick in the 79th minute that could determine if you make your way through to the next stage of the competition? So it's a decision that has to be made, and we will have to wait and see what way they end up going. I feel like that's giving you a few more extra nerves as we head towards the semi-final. I apologise for that, but should be an epic one to see how they do end up going. But now we move on to the centres. For myself, at number 12, I have gone with Damien de Allende, and number 13, Jesse Kriel. Now, Damien de Allende easily, I feel, could have got himself a man-of-the-match performance up against the French. He managed to make a lot of running meters, crashing the ball up hard. Didn't really put too many feet wrong, and in fact got himself a try alongside it as well. So that is why I've stuck with him in the starting side. Of course, up against the English, when they have got a few of those younger players in their side in the back line, looking at someone like a Marcus Smith, I was thinking maybe they could go with Andre Esterhuizen as Harlequin's teammate, seeing as there will be a little bit of inside knowledge, and maybe Moody on the outside. But I think after Kriel's performance, making the 14 tackles in that last fixture, I feel like he will also be able to keep his spot. But what about yourself? Have you made the big switch, given the two youngins a chance, or did you go with the experience once more?
Well, I've definitely gone with experience here, because I think you've got to go with Damien de Allende 100%, because like you said, he was like, in my opinion, I think he was the man of the match in that game against the French. I just think he was all over the place from an attacking stance and also from a defensive point of view. So, yeah, he definitely has to be my 12. But he really was the 13 that kind of caught me going back and forth here, because Jesse Kriel was also incredible throughout that game. But then in the back of my mind, of course, there's Lukhanyo Am, who was sitting right there. He's ready to be picked. And to be fair, when I look back at my my selection in terms of prediction, even on the previous video, I actually should have gone with Lukhanyo Am, actually, now that I think about it, for that one, because it just seemed he was primed up to face the French. But I don't know, when you're going against the English, it's a different kind of game, obviously. So I just don't know who's the better player to face the English, because again, they obviously play a different style compared to the French. So I'm not sure who was the better player to kind of counteract their centers, because again, they would have Tungalangi and Marchand there. I'll be honest, I actually think Lukhanyo Am is the better player against Marchand. So for that alone, I'm going to go with...
That's a bold call.
Yeah,
it's a very bold call.
I think he has a better... how can I say this in a more simple way? I think he is the player who can outmatch Marchand better compared to what Kriel can do. But I'm more underestimating Krill's form now. That's the thing. Krill's been incredible, so it pains me to say this. I feel you got to do something different, like what you've done with Faf de Klerk and Handré Pollard. I think the one change that could be different in this game is putting Lukhanyo Am. So for that reason, I've gone with the original combination to what we saw before the Rugby World Cup, which was Damien de Allende and Lukhanyo Am. So, I just feel so nervous even saying that. But yeah, look, let me know in the comments what you guys think, because I really think it's a 50-50 decision, but I understand fully if you guys disagree or even agree with me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, because I'm really going back and forth on that one.
And the tricky part is, of course, Marchand with a huge amount of pace.
Yeah,
and Lukhanyo Am just coming back from injury. Will he be able to match that speed, or would that be something that Jesse Kriel stylistically would be able to match up with nicer? It's a hard one, isn't it?
You're talking about best centers for teams in the world. He was up there for like World Player of the Year last year, I think. So like, just you gotta go with. Like, I feel like the more I say it, I'm just like, you gotta go with like Canio. But we'll see.
But now that leaves us with the back three. Now we saw three men have decent performances in the game up against France. One better than the others, of course, being Cheslin Colby, getting himself, honestly, what also could have been a man of the match performance rather than Bongion Manambi. But he managed to charge down that crucial kick that would have been the difference maker on the scoreboard and also scoring himself a try along the way as well. So for yourself, back three, any changes or going identical to the last contest?
Yeah, I think you got to go identical here. You just got to do it. I think it's one of those where I think the only change I could probably make if you wanted to is the 15 spot, because it is really kind of, I'm not saying it's back and forth. I think Williams has definitely had the better tournament compared to Willie LaRue, but I definitely saw when Willie LaRue came on in the second half, he definitely gave a bit more of a steady ship, I'd say, that back, which is what you want really when you're going into that kind of like the end stages of the game. So yeah, it's a tough decision, but I just think Williams, for his tackling, just him alone, just how his form throughout this competition has been incredible. So yeah, I'm going with Kobe number 11, Curtly Lorenza as my 14, and yeah, Damian Williams as my 15.
Oh, you almost slipped up there.
I almost slipped it there, but
15, didn't you?
Williams.
Yeah, I'm with Williams. So for myself, number 11, Cheslin Colby, 126 metres carried in that last contest, was looking elusive and looking extremely dangerous at this stage of the competition. Of course, he's got to be somewhere in that starting lineup after what he did to the English in that 2019 World Cup final. It's very hard to forget that highlight reel try that he managed to get for himself. Number 14, Kurtley Aronsa. I feel like he didn't really do too much wrong in that game up against France. He had like overall a solid game, I would say. We didn't see a huge amount of him. He made about, I think it was 60 metres or somewhere around there. So pretty solid performance for the box. And then number 15, I have stuck with Damien Willemse, although with that change of Pollard being my number 10, perhaps I should have been looking at Willie LaRue as that possible combo, just with two experienced players, unless, of course, there's a spot on my bench later on available. But now looking through at the benches. For myself, off the bench, number 16, Dion Forey. He came on the field relatively early for Sia Khaleesi, and that was a little bit of a surprise, although we did say before the game that there was a possibility that almost becomes a slightly adapted 6-2 split for the Springboks, if that makes sense. Almost a 6-3 to a certain extent, because he does cover that hooker, and if they didn't need him there for Bongion Manambi, they could use him in the loose forward trio. Then number 17, I have gone with Oxnard, so continuing his streak of playing every single game of this Rugby World Cup, the only Springbok to be able to do so up till date. And then number 18, Vincent Koch. I'm not too sure of the status of Trevor Nakanye. I don't know if there's an injury there, but the fact that they've gone with Vincent Koch the last 2 weeks makes me think that they will be sticking with him throughout the rest of this World Cup.
Yeah, no, I've done the exact same three as you there, and just the exact same reason for what you said with Vincent Koch. I've gone with him ahead of him, kind of just because there's a bit of doubt in terms of if he'll be available or not. But Dion Forey, you have to go with a number 16, and then like you said, Oxnard just played every single game throughout this Rugby World Cup, so you got to put him in once more. Just there's not really a lot of changes you can make in that front. I guess if you wanted to, maybe you could put Marco van Staden as a 16 to maybe be as like your hooker forward, but no, you can't change that. That has to be the free. So yeah.
Even the idea of that made your internet completely crash out, Tim. I obviously saw that last line out throw from Van Staden and said, no, thank you. We will stick with Dion Forey. But now we move on to the rest of the forward replacements. Now, I will ask you this question, and I feel like it has never been so unpredictable as this game up against the English. 5-3, 6-2, or we have to throw it in there now, 7-1 off the bench for the box here.
Hey, man, you never know. Maybe they go with a 4-4. Maybe that's the new combination they go with. But
that's a new one.
Hey, you never know. Maybe we can do the free props and then just one, like, I don't know, just put Quagga Smith in there.
He covers everywhere, doesn't he? So he'll be
exactly. Fine. He covers every part of the field. But no, for this one, I've gone with a 5-3. I don't think I've done a 5-3 in a very long time, but I just think it works so well against the French. I just think you've got to kind of go with it once more in this game. And then when you go into the All Blacks, I think that's where you can maybe change it up, I think. But for now, I think a 5-3 split is kind of what I've gone with here.
Alrighty, so your two forwards that you have got, who have you gone with in those two positions?
Yes. So I've definitely made a controversial decision for sure. Looking back at this, I'm just like, is this the right call? But I've gone with RJ Steinman. You just got to go with him. That's for sure. And I was looking back because I was considering this 6-2, and it's actually not as controversial now that I think about it, because I was considering to put Marco van Staan in the squad, but because I've gone with a 5-3, I've obviously had to go with Quagga Smith as the bench player to fill up that loose forward. But it's not actually controversial at all. Quagga Smith and RJ Steinman. That's just, it's easy said and done.
So no Dwayne Vermeulen for the semi-final.
Yeah, no. I think if you're gonna have the players I have, obviously from the backs, I just feel you got to have them in. You got to leave one of the forwards out, and yeah, unfortunately, Dwayne Vermeulen is that guy.
Alrighty, so for myself, I have gone with the 6-2 split. A little bit of a poker face there from myself, not giving too much away, but number 19, I have gone with RG Snyman once again. I feel like in that last game up against France, he didn't quite find his feet the way that we have seen throughout the other games of the Rugby World Cup, but I'm sure if he gets a few more minutes in this next contest, he will do extremely well, and also expected to play 35 minutes in that game up against France, which was a bit unique for the Springboks, normally only giving him like that 10 to 15 at the end of the fixture instead. Number 20, I have gone with Quagga Smith. There's really no way to leave this man out off current form.
Can't.
Like every game wins at least one turnover for the Springboks, makes his tackles, does exactly what he needs to when he makes his way from the bench. So that is why I have stuck with him once more. And then number 21, I didn't have him in the starting lineup, but I believe with that extra experience that he brings to the side, it's going to be somewhere the physical Dwayne Vermeulen. Now, I hope to see him get a few minutes in this game, and I could easily see them actually going with Vermeulen at 8 and Jasper Wiese as that number 21. But either way, I am hoping to see the 6-2 split here, mainly so I can be correct. I'm not often right, so we'll hope for the best. But now that leaves us 2 back replacements for myself and 3 back replacements for you as well. For myself, Kobus Reinach as my number 22. At the moment, it does seem to be Reinach and de Klerk, the two that they are going to be basing their game around as they head throughout these playoff games. Number 23, this was honestly a very tricky call because I have gone with Manie Libbok. Now, I believe that his attacking is something that will help the Springboks later on in this game up against the English, but it comes down to that scenario I mentioned. Who do you want?
Exactly. I was going to say, for your case, what is it then? Who's going to take that kick for you? Is it Kobe?
I mean, that's the thing. They have got options. Whether or not Faf de Klerk has already made his way from the field at that stage, I feel like you still give the T to Manie Libbok. I've said it all throughout this Rugby World Cup. Like, the man has taken so much criticism, but looking at that first kick that he got over, of course, the second kick not so ideal in that game up against France, but the first kick, nailing it. I feel like later on in a game, perhaps that is one of those winnable moments that Manie Libbok needs to give just that little bit more confidence. And I feel like we have talked all throughout this Rugby World Cup about trying to find confidence for Manie Libbok. But that's just because anytime he has a bad game, everyone turns against him. I feel sorry for the bloke because each time he has a good game, he gets a few of those people back. And then anytime he has a bad game, they all go plus some, end up walking out the door.
Exactly.
The man, Manie Libbok. So for yourself, you've got 3 back replacements.
For sure, I mean, yes, the 2 obvious ones, I got to go with Faf de Klerk and Andre Pollard. I mean, them 2, that's the reason why I want to have, that's why I went with a 5-3 split, because I want to have them 2 at least in this game. But for me, I was really flipping between Will LaRue and Jesse Krill, because I think you're not going to have one of them, which is really the big call here. But when I look at the team and I feel like who can cover the positions, this is, I know it's probably going to turn out wrong, but I've actually gone with Jesse Krill. I think Will LaRue is probably the more likelier option, but I'm just thinking more in terms of versatility and just terms of like you said, Lukanyo, he hasn't had as many minutes, so it does make sense to have a replacement for him. And if you need to, maybe even put Jesse Krill as one of the wingers, actually, if you needed to. Then put, I don't know, Chesson Kobe as a 15 option, or Curtly Lorenza, because they can play 15 with ease. So it's one of those where it really depends on how they switch up the squad, because if you have Williamson there, then it just depends how they do it. But I don't know. I want to be a bit different there. They may not go for that, but no, I just feel like I had to include Justin Krill somewhere because I just think he's been incredible throughout this Rugby World Cup. So to do him justice, I feel he has to be off the bench at least.
Here's a little bit of an extra seed that I'm going to plant in your mind.
Okay.
Perhaps, is there a chance they go Jesse Krill in the starting lineup, Lukanyo coming off the bench for a few minutes, near the end of this game, just to test him out, see how you think if he's in there, he's starting?
He has to start. That's the thing. Like, if you're gonna make that, like, even if you put Lukaniam in, I don't see him coming off the bench. Like, it's one of those like where he has to make the impact off the bat, because if you put him in, then also that opens the debate for the final. If the Boks were to advance to that stage, then do you go with Lukaniam or do you go with Jesse Clear? That's where that's probably that's the hardest decision. Obviously, choosing your squad for the final is definitely the hardest decision ever. But yeah, look, I don't think too far ahead, but for right now, I would prefer to choose Lukaniam over Jesse Krill in that 13 spot, but I would not be disappointed if they went with Jesse Krill there. So either way, it's going to be great.
So you're giving them the Andre Pollard Tonga treatment, how it's chuck him in the deep end, see if he can float, and if he's able to, then progress him into that finals matchup. That is, of course, if the Springboks progress their way through this game up against the English. In rugby, we have learnt from those quarterfinals, there are no certainties. Anything can happen, and that is why both of these sides will want to be on their A game going into this fixture. But we do thank you all very much for tuning in to the Springboks lineup prediction video. Do let us know who you feel the selectors will be going with in their contest up against the English. It is an 8 a.m. kickoff here in New Zealand on Sunday morning, or 9 p.m. in South Africa. Gonna be an epic one when the two sides do go head to head. But if you are new, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Also check out Rugbyitch's YouTube channel and the Rugby Recap, both links in the description down below. But thank you all very much for tuning in, and we will see you all for the next one.